Hello and welcome. It is episode 39 of Coffee Talk, and we are back to our weekly schedule. So if you heard us last week and you're hearing us again this week and you're like, what? That's what happened. We're going to be recording every week now for Coffee Talk, trying to help you. We've been talking a lot. We talk a lot about prospects, Nate, but we're probably going to bring that focus back towards major league rosters and redraft because we are a redraft podcast.
We
But
are.
I got to sneak the prospects in. It's what I do. Anyway, my name is Trevor Hooth. I guess we should get to that first. And I am joined, of course, by Nate Kosher. Nate, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Excited to announce I am actually going to Arizona tomorrow and hope to catch some spring training baseball. So I haven't done the research yet. I haven't had the time to figure out who I want to watch, where, and when the games are, specifically who's playing where. But very excited and trying to figure out how many games I can sneak in without my family, getting annoyed.
It's a baseball trip with family involved as well, I think is what you're
Yeah,
telling us.
right.
Hopefully your family doesn't listen to this podcast. Anyway, that is going to be fun. That's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to hearing who you go to see. That does mean that
Yeah.
Nate will not be here next week. We will find somebody to fill in for him, but I will be here next week.
Yeah, so I'll definitely report back once I'm back in a couple weeks who I got to see live and pretty excited.
Going to be focused on catchers, right?
Catchers, that's right.
So we have a lot to talk about. Speaking of spring training, we're going to jump into some of that. One thing I am excited about. Uh, well, first of all, I want to shout out some writers at Pitcher List. So I just took over recently as the one of the managers for the Going Deep section for the Pitcher List website,
Hmm.
and my writers have some really awesome stuff that they're cooking. Um, I mean, it's some really great stuff. So check out the Going Deep section. We have one of our newer writers, Kyle McCarthy, who's been doing really interesting pieces on bat speed and how that's affecting hitters. And he did one last week that was increased bat speed. Less bat speed came out the day we're recording this on this Monday. And of course, like Nate Schwartz always has some really good stuff coming out. And I have a number of writers. I know one of them's working on a Jackson Job thing. One of them's working on a Nolan Shanuel thing. So really interesting stuff. I want to shout my writers out because I have a platform and they are doing phenomenal things, and I've been loving it.
That's
So
cool.
before
Yeah,
we
and
dive in, I wanted to give them a shout out.
if you haven't read Going Deep before, it's where, as it sounds like, sort of the extra statistical analysis, next level stats, like really digging in to look at something. And so they're very interesting articles.
They are, and they always have a pretty good shape to them because you get a lot of numbers. And one thing I've been pushing for is making sure we get some more video involved in it too, so you can kind of see every angle of it, and they answer questions. Like again, the bat speed one.
Hmm.
Who's been tinkering with their bat speed and their swing length, honestly, and who's it helping? So again, make sure to check those out. I want to shout those articles out now. We have other stuff we're going to talk about. Spring training is happening still. We are inching closer and closer to opening day. We have awful pitcher injuries are happening, but we did a lot of injuries last time. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez, Garrett Cole, George Kirby. Those are three that come to mind. They're down
Yeah,
for varying times. Grayson Rodriguez theoretically is going to be back in throwing in 7 to 10 days, but you never know with that kind of injury. Garrett Cole's out for the long haul, it seems like, and George Kirby probably going to be a while. So hate to
big
lose that
names
the
too.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
three big names. I saw Cole's going for a second opinion on his arm, but it looks like Tommy John
yeah. Hmm.
is in the
Well,
future.
and one of the things that was talked about in the pitcher list Discord, which if you're not in, I mean, join because lots of good information happens. I was learning about kick changes the other night, and I super interesting how they throw kick change ups. Like pitchers have added them, like Andres Munoz added one, and it's
Hmm.
nasty. Um, there's a few other pitchers who had Davis Martin, the opening day starter for the White Sox, has one. It's nasty. So anyway, really good stuff going on in the Discord. This isn't all just going to be me pumping up pitcher list stuff, but the point of this is that in the Discord, somebody was talking about how it probably like first opinion most likely was yes, it's TJ. Second opinion is okay. Do you need internal brace with it? Do you need like it's
Mm.
very unlikely that they're going to come back and be like, no, wait, he's healthy. What are you talking about?
So that makes we talked about this last week uh, with the Yankees starter and Louis Heel that now they're down two starters,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so that's
So
going to open up another spot in addition.
right, and we had talked about Marcus Stroman or Will Warren, and now
Will
it looks like it's
Warren,
going to be Marcus Stroman and Will Warren.
yeah, that's what I was just thinking. I was thinking that same thing. So Cole, he was hurt, wasn't he hurt last season? Like
Yeah,
he only had a partial season last season.
only threw like 90 innings last season, so
Yeah,
he's unfortunately he'll be 35 by the time next season starts, and he's theoretically on his way back.
yeah, I think that's not good for him
Hmm.
with the age he's at, and
Yeah,
yeah, ouch.
and two injuries in a row. I mean, it's we'll have to see how he comes back. You never quite know. Emerson Hancock probably a name to watch out in replacement for George Kirby, I would think. I don't think the Mariners have a phenomenal rotation, so I don't think Emerson Hancock had a spot, but now he probably does.
Hmm.
Former high pick, definitely a guy that I would take a chance on later in drafts if he's available.
Yeah, I was looking at him at one point
Mhm.
in my deeper league, and I know he's got to be close to their top five, top three prospects, I would think, for the Mariners.
I think he's out of prospect status, but at one point
Oh, okay.
he was a top 10. He was a top pick at some point. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on. And I mean, there's no reason for any of these guys. Grayson Rodriguez. I mean, that Oriole rotation looks not pleasant at the moment. Roster Resource has Zach Eflin, Charlie Morton, Dean Kremer, uh, Tomoyuki Sugano, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Cade Povich as the starting five. And I mean, they really don't have a whole lot coming behind it. Chase McDermott still is hurt. Kyle Bradish. They have pitchers who are hurt, and they don't have the best pitching prospects. Ronzi Contreras is somebody they were stretching out just in case. So, I mean, not great options in the Orioles. I would prefer the options you're getting from the Yankees in terms of Will Warren and even Emerson Hancock over Marcus Stroman or some of these options from the Orioles.
Yeah, I I was just going to look at that as well. Trevor Rogers,
Mhm.
I remember him. He was okay with the Marlins for a couple years, but looks like
Great first name.
he's injured. Great first name, of course. What's funny is I feel like the Orioles have a really strong bullpen. Um,
Yeah.
with and not we mentioned this too last week with Felix Bautista back, but they have a lot of strong arms. But comparing that to their starters, yeah, doesn't look great. And they missed out on Burns, obviously,
Mhm.
and didn't really replace him at all. So
It's
tough break.
interesting you mentioned their bullpen because Felix Batista, yes. Sir Anthony Dominguez, former closer. Keegan
Hmm.
Aiken, who is a converted starter who did really well out of the bullpen last year in a short stint and even got a few save opportunities at least. Uh, Yennier Cano, who's a former closer, Gregory Soto, who's a former closer.
So,
And so you're
yeah,
getting like five guys deep who you can trust or at least have been trusted at some point at the end of games. So definitely a strong bullpen and probably a popular bullpen in saves holes leagues.
yeah. Soto was on the Tigers at one point, wasn't he? Didn't he get some
Yes, he
saves
was.
while
That's
he
where
was
he
with the
started.
Tigers? Yeah,
Started there, and then they
thought so.
traded him to the Phillies, and now he is on the Orioles. So, all right. So those are our pitcher injuries. We went over them really quick. We spent a
Yeah,
lot of time on injuries last time, and I'm feeling some more positivity this time around, Nate. So let's talk about some people who are doing well, some interesting players. Jack Caglianone, the uh, reigning first round pick of the Royals. Sorry, it's been a long day. Reigning first round pick of the Royals,
yes.
ninth overall, if I'm not mistaken, has been doing very well in spring training. He was a two-way player when he was at Florida. I believe. I mean, last I saw, they didn't close the door on pitching, but I'm pretty sure with this spring training performance, they're just going to shut the door pretty hard
Yeah, yeah.
and say, "Hey, just hit the ball."
Well, he has been okay. So he's been an absolute monster. Yesterday, let's see, 444-foot home run off Aaron Savale, 114.6 mile per hour exit velocity. And that was his third home run already of the season. He has over a 2.0 OPS, and has just looked like a monster,
Mhm.
which makes me think, A, what is his ceiling? And then B, how quick do you think he can make it up to the majors?
Both good questions. And just to jump in, as we're talking, I got an alert on my phone. Garrett Cole will receive Tommy John surgery tomorrow, so
Oh,
Tuesday.
there it is.
Um,
Second
Jeff
opinion.
Passan tweeted that. But anyway, we can't get away from the injuries, Nate. We tried.
We
No.
did. We can't
So
escape them.
so the thing with Caglianone is that he has a ton of power, like lots and lots of power. And he has a better hit tool than some of those guys who are big power. Like we talked about Davison De Los Santos. And actually, I was writing up the Marlins system, and I'm trying to think of what is Davison De Los Santos, and he's probably somewhere in between Jake Berger and Reese Hines. Um, and Jack Caglianone is above that. Okay, so I'm not out here to say that he's not a, a great prospect who could turn into something, but
Yeah.
he's a high power first base prospect. And that is kind of interesting, especially when you're talking about the Royals, at least in my mind. Um, he played in high A, so and then he was in the AFL. I don't think that they're just gonna be like, "Hey, you played in high A, that's enough for us. We're gonna get you out of camp. You're gonna be a Kansas City Royal in 2025 from the jump." I think he
Yeah, that does seem pretty extreme.
probably heads to double A, maybe triple A if they're feeling aggressive with him. I mean, he's certainly played his way to maybe getting a chance at triple A to start the year. Uh, they also have Vinny Pasquantino at first base, so they're not hurting for a first baseman right now,
Right.
and
That's the
that plays
problem.
into this equation. And so maybe you think DH, but I mean, roster resources, Jonathan India DHing right now. You could move Michael Massey out of the lineup probably, or Michael Garcia. Like there's options for when he's ready. My and this is from a um limited looks at him. I do worry about his ability to consistently hit the ball. He
Mhm.
hits the ball hard when he barrels it, don't get me wrong, and there's plenty, and that'll play. Like his power is absolutely going to play, but in terms of consistently getting to his barrels, I don't know if I see it as much. So I've been kind of lower on him in first year player drafts. And I haven't really been going after him a whole lot. I have open universe leagues where I actually traded him away just because I thought I could cash in. Unfortunately, his stock's only gone up with his performance, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But um, I think he has to prove he's going to be able to hit professional pitching consistently, not just in high A, or not just in spring training, I should say. In high A, he hit 241, 20% strikeout rate, 5% walk rate, couple home runs in 126 at bats. So I think they're just going to want to see consistency, and that doesn't close the door for maybe the end of 2025, but I think you're looking more towards 2026 for when he would be a legitimate option for the Royals.
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on there. The other problem, it's not a problem, but for him getting playing time, it's a problem. Salvador Perez, in addition to catching, has played first base, has DH'd, and
Mhm.
so he's getting up there in years, but he's hasn't slowed
Still
down yet.
productive.
Yeah, and so that's another person that would be blocking him. So
Mhm.
uh, has been absolutely fun to watch, though.
Oh
He's
yeah.
putting on a show.
Oh yeah. So, uh, uh, and again, the long home runs are fantastic. Torkelson's hit a few home runs. He's been on a power surge lately too. So, things happen.
Yeah,
Javi Baez has a couple home runs. I mean, granted, they were off of like 90-mile-an-hour fastballs from double A pitchers, but you know,
I had not seen that. That's funny.
things happen in spring training. That's part of the fun of spring training. Um, Another guy you wanted to talk about, Nate, is Chandler Simpson, outfield prospect for the Rays. So I really don't know what his numbers are offhand, but I know that he's been lighting things up in a fun way, one way or another.
Yeah, so he said that just gonna pull up his spring training stats here, but it's interesting to try to figure out how to value him. And his speed is his calling card. He recently said that he is the fastest man in baseball. He would beat Ellie De La Cruz in a race. He said he would definitely beat any big leaguers in a race. And last year he had 104 steals. That was in high A and double A. So
Is that a lot?
obviously an elite skill,
Mm-hmm.
but how how do we value that when it comes to fantasy, right? And he's gonna at least have to hit the ball, um, play some defense if he wants to have a shot at the majors because he's not going to be able to DH and he's going to have to play in the field. So it's an elite skill to keep an eye on. I still don't think it's someone you'd be rostering, but it just catches your eye because it's like, such an outlier.
It is. He's kind of his profile is kind of one of extremes. Good contact, really good speed, and then what's going to happen? So,
Mm-hmm.
Baseball America gives him 70 contact, 80 speed, but then it's 20 power, 45 field, 30 arm, right? So it's a really interesting profile. Um, you want to believe in the speed, and if he's stealing bases like that, then yes, he's somebody you want to roster in fantasy. He will absolutely like win you a category by himself. He also hit 350 last year between high A and double A, which again, great. The So the problem is, where does he go from being a average stabilizer who can steal bases in probably deeper leagues to somebody you want to roster? Um, just again, shout out Baseball America. They say the hope is that he turns into like a Juan Pierre type, um, which is
Yeah,
interesting. I also want to point out the last fastest man in baseball that we were all excited about was, in my head, Billy Hamilton.
exactly. Yes.
So there's kind of, without him being able to contribute fantasy baseball wise, I'm talking just fantasy baseball right now, without him being able to contribute to power or OBP, or I mean, likely even, the RBIs, and without him being able to consistently contribute in certain categories beyond just average and stolen bases, for me, that makes his profile very, very tricky, and one that is hard to gauge, and even probably even hard to roster at a certain point.
I had another name come to mind, which is D. Gordon.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, speed, hit, hit for average, but like absolutely no power.
Hmm.
And I just went and looked up D. Gordon and Juan Pierre on Baseball Reference. They had the exact number of career home runs. I'm going to have you do a guessing game, Trevor. How many career home runs do you think they had?
Um, how many years do you have? How many years each of them played?
Yes. So Juan Pierre played for 14 years and D. Gordon played for 11 years.
Can you tell me the amount of home? No, I'm kidding. Let's see. I don't want to
A
I feel like I'm going to underguess so hard.
a lot of
Um,
steals. They have a lot of
lot of
steals.
steals. You know what? I did this when we were talking Giancarlo's stolen bases. Can you give me for one of them? Can you give me career or like season high home runs for one of them?
Okay, I'll give you the highest number between the two. Let me look.
Okay. All right. This
Um,
is prime podcasting
this
hours.
is D. Gordon. Twice he hit the 4 home run mark
Okay.
in a season.
33
That's pretty good. I would have never guessed as low as the right answer, which is 18 home runs. 18
career.
career home runs.
Wow. Okay. All
Isn't that
right.
wild?
So that means D Gordon had 10 home runs outside of 2 seasons.
Yeah. Isn't that
Okay,
wild?
interesting. Yeah. I
And
was worried I was going to
bo-
underguess, and I was sitting at 30 the whole time.
both of them, I mean, were good players. I mean, both we remembered them and a couple all-star bids, but I think that's probably his best case scenario. Maybe he
Okay.
can take advantage of the steal, the friendly steal rules now for even more.
Right.
But it's hopefully that and not Billy Hamilton end of things.
Wonder how automated ball strikes will play into the stealing thing though, because
Yeah,
you're not trying to steal strikes anymore and frame strikes. It's the thing
true.
is there, so catchers can just preset to throw. Honestly,
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
I don't know. Yeah, just I hadn't thought about it either till just now. Also, I think we are like molding our podcast in front of the listeners' ears because we should start doing guess the stat along with defend yourself. We have
They're really good segments.
we have segments on segments growing. So anyway, yeah, Chandler Simpson, he may get time. I mean, I was looking at the roster resource for the Rays, and like Johnny DeLuca's in the outfield right now, and there seemed like there might be one or two other spots if he's going to hit enough, and that is just a big what if, and also probably depends on your league.
Hmm.
If you're an OBP league, then I'm not as concerned about Chandler Simpson as if I'm in an average league, especially until he proves he can get on base enough to steal. And if he does, if he's big on steals, then he's somebody you're going to want because he will be a huge a contributor to that category.
Yeah, then he's valuable for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So a couple of interesting prospects there. Uh, what about the Pirates? We talk about their pitching a lot. We talk about their pitching so much. Their pitching is so good.
It is really, really good. Yeah. I mean, uh the beyond the studs, there's a couple of other guys that you need to know about, but the question is, will they also ever get offense? Which I'm not sure about that. But should we head for a break here, Trevor, before we dig into the Pirates?
Yes, we will. We'll take a quick timeout here on Coffee Talk. We come back. We're going to talk Pirates pitching. We'll be right back for Nick Kosher. My name is Trevor Hooth. Coffee Talk is a part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth, of course, joined by Nate Kosher. We were starting a topic about the Pirates, and then we looked at the clock and thought,
Yeah.
let's hold on a minute. So the Pirates pitching is really good. You mentioned the studs, right? You have potential, arguably SP1 in all of baseball, if not SP2. Okay, depending
Yep.
on how you want to rank Scooble and Skeens. So that's the top. And then you have Jared Jones, who proved himself to be valuable last year when he was healthy. Then you have Mitch Keller. And then you have Bubba Chandler coming up. And then you have Thomas Harrison coming up, both of whom should be ready at some point in 2025, if not, from the start. And right now, the back of the rotation is projected to be Andrew Heaney and Bailey Falter. So they have quite a bit of options.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is presently penciled in Falter and Haney, who Andrew Haney has shown flashes. I don't know, he's average at best, I guess. Falter is not very good. So I would think Chandler's gonna make definite noise this year,
Mhm.
and he's gonna be taking starts on those guys in it won't take that long of time. But like you said, beyond that, I think people are actually forgetting about Harrington, and that's someone we talked about. I think we've talked about him once before when we are looking at our top 100. But someone who throws strikes, has a bunch of pitches. His stuff isn't quite as electric as Skeens, and I think no matter who the pitchers are on this roster, having Skeens, you could forget about him, even if they had a fellow All Star on the team. And I think Harrington will be, good in his own right, but the ceiling is so high that you sort of forget about these additional pitchers. And it makes me think of like the Atlanta Braves or the in the 90s or the New York Mets, in like the 2010s, 15s there when they had all the starters. And knock on wood, they all stay healthy.
Well, and there's 2 other pitchers, honestly, that we could mention, prospect pitchers, who are in AAA. They're coming off of injured seasons. They've had injury problems in the past, but, Braxton Ashcraft and Mike Burrows.
Oh,
Both
I
of them
forgot
have
about Burrows.
posted
Yeah.
both of them have posted pretty high strikeout rates all throughout the minors. Braxton Ashcraft has nasty stuff, but again, can't stay healthy. Neither one is pitching in spring training like they're going to be taking a job out of the gate. But with with injuries, because injuries do happen, they might be called upon. Because one thing that Ashcraft and Burrows have that Chandler and Harrington don't, which isn't everything, but it's not nothing, is a 40-man spot. So
Good point.
if if they need someone, they may just say, "Hey, we'll put someone on a 60-day IL, we'll DFA somebody, and here comes Bubba Chandler." Or they may say, "Let's let Bubba Chandler make a few starts in AAA, get his bearings a little bit more, and here comes Braxton Ashcraft, here comes Mike Burrows." They could also wind up in the bullpen. It's kind of a fluctuation, but there's 2 more potential starters that the Pirates have that we aren't really going to get talked about because you have Harrington and you have Chandler on top of Skeens, Jones, Keller.
And I was just looking at their average age here. Skeens is 22. Jared Jones is 23. Um, where's Bubba Chandler? He's probably 21 or 22, I would guess.
Bubba Chandler is 22.
22. Okay. So,
Harrington is 23. Ashcraft and Burrows are 25.
so you, they're so young.
Mhm.
Um, you, like I said, you worry about the injuries, but also, can the Pirates or the Pirates the type of team that can keep all of these guys together long term? I have I also have doubts that they can do that, and especially Skeens, you'd think some of these larger market teams eventually are going to be calling his name and trying to pull him a little bit farther east. The Yankees, Red Sox, Mets. Um, we'll see what they end up doing with contracts and extensions, but that's something in the future for fantasy purposes. I mean, slight differences could be had, but
I'll tell
the
you what.
Pirates, yeah, I don't. Do you have a lot of trust in the Pirates?
Um, I don't know where their hitting's going to go. They're a
Yeah.
weird team. I thought this as I was writing them up for Fantrax. They're a weird team because they have very high variance players that could be depth for them. Like they bring in Joey Barton, and he's your catcher now. You have Andy Rodriguez coming off injury, who could probably play catcher, first base,
Hmm.
whatever. Second base, you have I'm sorry, you still have Henry Davis, who you could have play catcher, who's a former first overall pick. Second
Yeah.
base, you have Nick York, you have Emmanuel Valdez, you eventually have Termar Johnson, you have Nick Gonzalez currently playing there. There's just these guys who are Leo Verpeguero is on the 40 man and can play around the infield. Jack Sawinski, Jihuan Bay, like they just have all these guys who theoretically could start in their lineup. It's not doesn't mean they're going to win games, but theoretically could start in their lineup, and it's all just depth at this point. But it could either be really good or really bad. It's boom or bust, which is really interesting. Uh, I don't know. It's just interesting in my mind and makes him not trustworthy on the offensive side. On the pitching side, yeah. I mean, give me Skeens, give me Jones, give me Keller, give me Bubba Chandler. Um, I I waffle back and forth on if I would take Thomas Harrington, honestly, in redraft leagues. I kind of want to see how it looks at the major league level first. In
Yeah.
dynasty leagues, I absolutely, but in redraft, I kind of want to see how it looks first and then potentially go after him next year. But I guess it depends. What I was thinking, Nate, if you could put the Orioles offense with the Pirates pitch, you might have. I can't think of 2 other teams that you mash together in terms of what they have and what they need to make a better team.
That would be a great team. Baltimore Pirates or Pittsburgh Orioles or some sort of mashup name like celebrity couples have.
Right. I mean, seriously, I'm there probably is another one that could be as good. I just That would be a crazy good team and a really fun team if you really think about it. Um, so
It's funny because we just looking at them back to back, you really
yeah,
see where the gaps are.
right, right. So um, with that, you want to talk overrated or underrated prospects, Nate. So I'll let you introduce this one because I know this is something you're bringing in.
Yeah, so yesterday I was lucky enough to be part of Podapalooza, which was put
Woo!
on by Justin Mason. 2 days of fantasy baseball guests and discussions, etc. And so I was on with a panel talking prospects, and so I'm stealing an idea from there. What we talked about yesterday was
Borrowing.
borrowing. Thank you, borrowing an idea of underrated prospects versus overrated prospects, and we said that could mean a few different things. It doesn't mean that these players are terrible. It could be not enough people are talking about them. It could be maybe they're getting a little bit too big of hype for whatever reason, or maybe they're coming back from an injury that we've forgotten about them, etc. So there's a few people that I pointed out for underrated, overrated. Um, so I don't know if you've thought of anyone or if I should just jump in.
You go ahead. I will be locked and loaded, ready to go. You go ahead.
Okay, so the reason that I was talking about this, so let's go overrated first. So I
And this
have
is
a
for fantasy, by the way, right?
yes
Okay.
for fantasy purposes, and some of these guys may not be totally relevant in 2025, but down the road they are prospects you should know about, and we're going to talk about how they should be rated. So the first one, overrated, Jacob Mizorowski. Now you can probably figure out why he would be overrated, but it's he has crazy stuff. Um, throws 100 miles an hour, has all these pitches, but I think what we've talked about with him before is even that he has a lot of reliever risk, and he hasn't necessarily even shown that his control is there. So people want him to be a starter. He has more fantasy value, right? If he's a starter, and they haven't completely, the Brewers moved off of him being a starter, but I think there is doubt that he ever figures out these control issues and these walk issues, and that he harnesses his power, A, and then B, being moved from a starter to a reliever, he'd lose a lot of value long term, right? And so that's the first one.
I have a wild Jacob Mizorowski comp.
Okay.
Joe Boyle.
Oh,
If he
yeah.
can
I
be in,
was
if he can be in the
watch.
zone, it's going to be very, very good. But can he?
I saw
And
some videos of Boyle today, actually
yeah,
pitching in spring training.
well, and Boyle's with the Rays, who promote just throw it down the middle and let him hit it, and I think that's going to be good for him.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That is a good comp. Last year, Boyle with the A's 6.42 ERA, but I would think he's going to be better with the Rays because they know what to do.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's fun. Mizraski, 6'7", throws 100 miles an hour. He's near or on 100 top 100 lists, and I think he was toward the end of MLB 100. So
Mhm.
it's just something to think about long term, and something to evaluate. Second, I have three total. Second one is Xavier Isaac, and I think someone else had him on their list too, and I had stolen it first. But once again, someone with an elite skill, which
Mhm.
is power. But if you dig into his statistics a little bit further, he had a 40% K rate last year in Double A, which really makes you kind of step back and think, "Ooh, yikes." Um, will he? So the question, sort of like, will he figure out control for a pitcher? Will he figure out the strikeouts for a hitter? So in high A, he hit 287 with 15 home runs. He moves to Double A last year. He only hit 211 with 3 home runs. and as I mentioned, that 40% strikeout rate. Now they did send him to the Arizona Fall League for some additional reps, and he's still highly thought of. But I kind of have a red flag because of that strikeout situation.
Do you want to know something interesting about Xavier Isaac and his hit tool?
Yes.
Baseball America rates his hit tool as 55. Give him an above average hit tool. I am with you on the strikeouts. They're concerning. I understand where all that's coming in. However, very
55.
to me,
Yeah.
I really like the evaluators at Baseball America.
We know the power's there, right?
Just a preference, right? So the power's there for sure. They give him a 55 hit tool, and that's really interesting to me because, as you mentioned, he had a lot of strikeouts. They were saying that there was something in the timing of his swing, not to get into the nitty gritty, that caused him to miss a lot and to have his timing be off. So that's really interesting. And this year could be really fun or not fun for him, depending on how it goes.
Well, I was going to say that sounds like a Going Deep article,
Hmm.
actually. But I think, yeah, this is kind of going to be a make or break it year for him and how his name continues to rise
Mhm.
on prospect lists. But depending on where it goes, then you can make a move. Maybe you want to trade for him or you want to trade him. Last one I had is actually a pirate, and that's Termar Johnson. Is it Termar or Termar? Do you know how to say his name
Termar.
exactly? Termar. So, uh, speedster, can hit, first round draft pick. Have you ever looked or dug into his stats though?
I
In the
have.
mine, in the minors, he's a
Mhm.
career 239 hitter,
Mhm.
which that that raises some red flags. And I was just thinking, is this guy potentially overrated?
Might be. I remember. Oh man, I just remember his draft cycle. That was the first draft cycle that I like really paid attention to, and his bat speed just looked like something special. So I have problems not believing in Johnson. But you're right. The stats tell me that I really shouldn't in a lot of ways. So certainly interesting. The one thing I will say when it comes to him, to Termar Johnson, is that he's only 20 years old and he was in AAA last year. And I know you want him to have a higher average. He still has really good walk rates, and his strikeout rates aren't astronomical. They were, but he's worked to bring them down. So he was 15 home runs, 22 steals with a 15% walk rate and a 21% strikeout rate last year. And that was between, I mean, that was mostly in high A, but he did have a 14 game stint in double A. So he's still very young, is my
He's young. Yeah, he's
um
definitely young for his level. And those
it's
numbers, you're
yeah.
right. That doesn't scare you, the strikeout rate.
And
At
it's not an overmatched 230. You know what I mean? Like it's not 230 is
yeah,
great, especially for a guy who's not hitting 40 home runs, but it's not an overmatched 230 from a guy who's pretty young. I again, you're right. The stats are, he might be a little bit overrated. He might need more seasoning. He might need more time, but certainly not someone. I don't know. Like I said, I have trouble not believing in him. He was like one of the top guys from that first draft class, so that I
I
really
mean,
paid attention to. So
MLB has him number 3 for the Pirates, and I guess part of it is for me like I guess he would get steals still, no matter
mhm.
what. If he hits enough to get on base, he'd have steals, but he's not going to have a slugger amount of home runs, but he could still have 20 home runs, 15, 20 home runs. So I was just researching some guys, and that scared me out. That scared me a little bit, but you're
Oh, for
right.
sure.
He is young. He's pretty
Um,
young.
all right, so I'll add one to the overrated prospects list. We're gonna take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll do underrated prospects, and then I have like 4 trades if we can get to them for defend yourself. Um, I was busy. So the guy that I'm gonna add, the guy that I'm gonna add to the potentially overrated is Emmanuel Rodriguez from the Twins. Um, he's a guy who everyone likes because he walks
Hmm.
at an insanely high rate and he has some really good power. And I can't. I mean, I'm not going to put it past him that he doesn't have these tools and these things that are interesting, especially in terms of fantasy. He hit 280 last year, mostly in double A. Once he got to triple A, it was 217, but his walk rate was over 20%. He also struck out about 30% of the time. Only hit 9 home runs too. So when I say he has power, the power is real. It's just, can he get to it? And my thing with him, he's just so like there is an argument to be made about being patient versus being passive when you are looking at a guy who draws a lot of walks and doesn't swing a lot. If you're patient, you're waiting for a pitch.
Hmm.
If you're passive, you're just not swinging, basically. I mean,
Right.
probably more to it than that. But to me, Emmanuel Rodriguez has always been passive. He has a 20% walk rate, but he's just maybe too selective. He just doesn't swing a whole lot. And when he does swing, it seems like he's not making a whole lot of contact. And if you look at the numbers, his zone contact rating is not good. I mean, when he does swing. So if I'm the Twins, I'm saying be more aggressive because the more he swings, the more he's probably going to, hit the ball. But it just doesn't seem like he wants to swing a whole lot. And I thought that when I saw him in High A a couple years ago, and it's just kind of continued on for me. So he's a guy who's knocking on the door of the major leagues. He's
Yeah,
probably
he is.
AAA, and you think he's going to be in Minnesota at some point. And if he can walk, great. OBP help, maybe get you some power. But I just don't know if the bat's going to play as well as it does for where he's rated. He's a top 20 prospect in fantasy and in real life. Like he's a guy. He's supposed to be a dude, and I just don't
Yeah.
see it playing that well because I don't know if he can hit the ball well enough for it to play.
It was interesting you said Minnesota Twins passive versus selective, and or patient. And
Hmm.
it made me think of Joe Mauer because he would irritate fans by taking pitches and just trying to get on base any way he
Hmm.
can. And I think sometimes he suffered from that same thing of just put the ball in play, but
Hmm.
he would work the counts, and
Right, and can you foul pitches off with 2 strikes? That plays into it. But again, if he's swinging twice a game and can't hit the ball, that's going to be a problem. Is the point I'm making? And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's great. He has the tools to be fantastic. It's just, will he hit enough? I don't know. So on that, we're gonna take a quick timeout. When we come back, we're gonna talk about some undervalued prospects, and then Nate can rip me apart for some trades I made. And that is all coming up here. Coffee Talk, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. I'm joined by Nate Kosher. We were just talking some prospects who we think might be overrated. Now, what about the prospects who need more love, who are underrated? This is my favorite category. I have a bunch of names in
oh,
mind.
good.
I don't know if you have some you wanna rattle off that you shared during Potapalooza.
I'll just go one name and then you can share yours. And the name I shared was Rhett Lauder, and
Mhm,
sort of for the reasons we were talking about the Pirates before, just being overshadowed by bigger names such as Skeens, Bubba Chandler, um, just big stars that are prospects. I feel like people have forgotten about Rhett Lauder. He doesn't throw quite as fast, but he can hit the mid 90s. And his big thing is control. So he's going to throw strikes. Yes, he plays for the Reds, but I think that he has a high floor because of that control. And last year he looked good. He started 6 games. He looked good. The
mhm,
Reds need starters, so I just think people have forgotten about him, and they should not have.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I traded him to in the league I had him, but absolutely, I've liked him since he was back at Wake Forest. And he and Chase Burns, both Wake Forest products, are gonna be really fun,
Oh, Burns,
especially when
yeah.
you're adding him to Hunter Green, in that Reds rotation one day. So and one day soon too, for both of them. Yeah, not a bad name. I'll stick with a pitcher that I've talked about, so I'm not going to dig too far in, but we are not talking about how good Noah Schultz is. He's generally ranked in like the teens or the 20s. I have him ranked 6th. I am all in. Like he's SP3 in terms of prospects for me,
Yeah,
behind Roki and Job. And I I don't know, man. I just am all in for him.
you've stated
Being
your
good.
love.
Anyway, another guy, this guy's not, is probably a few years off, but Michael Arroyo, he is back end top 100 on most lists. I have him 36. I believe that he has a fantastic hit tool and can cover the zone really well. And I also believe he is adept at lifting the balls that are supposed to be lifted for home runs. So I think he's going to be able to contribute in a lot of categories and hit the ball with consistency. So again, don't want to dive too far in there because he's a couple years out, but he's a guy that I'm definitely in on more so than most people. Um, and I'll go one more because nope, I have to go two more. I'm so sorry. The other one is Johnny Farmello. He tore his ACL, but fantastic
Oh yeah.
athlete. Most people have him top 100, but I think he's not being talked about enough. Still a couple of years off, but definitely a prospect that I think is going to could rather explode this year if he stays fully healthy. Now, the guy that I want to talk about that is probably more helpful this year, Moises Chase. I can't get enough of this dude.
Yes.
He is last year after he got traded from Baltimore to Philly in Double A for the Phillies through 19 innings with a 16 K per nine and a 3.66 ERA. I wrote his scouting report for Prospects Live. I love him. I have been seeking him out in any league I can get him, and it's getting tougher and tougher because the word's getting out. But he is easily a top 100 prospect for me. I think I have him at 86, and he's definitely somebody who I think could be helpful sooner than later. Somebody said they remind him of like Devi Garcia before he fell off. If you remember the prospect track that Devi Garcia was on, but I don't know. Chase's just got some really good stuff. Nick liked him when we watched prospects at PitchCon, so there's a lot going for him here at Pitcherless. But Chase is a guy that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, that the first I had heard of him was when you and Nick were doing your segment. I tried to go
Mhm.
get him, and someone had already snatched him up. But I did see the Phillies sent him to Double A just over
Okay,
the
yeah, it makes
weekend,
sense. I mean,
and so yeah, I think that makes sense. He'll probably be definitely up in Triple A later this season. But
a
yeah,
stone's throw away at that point.
right. I agree with you. We probably shouldn't be telling people about him, but they're going to
That's our
steal him
job.
away. But he's
That's our
good.
job,
Yeah,
mate. That's what
that
we
is our
do.
job.
All right, so I will see how much time we have for these trades. I know defend yourself is something we like to do. Let's start with the big one. I got Paul Skeens in a trade. Now I am in. This is a free league, so people like to just throw players around. It's not as competitive as when you're spending, too much money to be in a
Your
fantasy
own money.
baseball league.
Yes.
A lot of times I go, "Hey, can I have this reliever?" And they go, "Well, do you want to give me one of your best players?" And I think they're kidding, but also I'm like, not really. Um, so that's kind of what happened here. I was asking for something. I don't even remember what it was. The guy goes, "Well, you could give me Junior Caminero." And I was like, "Okay, if I'm going to trade your Caminero, I'm going to get Skeens. I'm going to get Paul Skeens." He goes, "So
Yeah.
Junior Caminero and Bubba Chandler." I'm like, "Yes, I will do that 100%." So I traded Junior Caminero and Bubba Chandler, and I got Paul Skeens.
Okay, so this reminds me of the Roki Sasaki trade from a couple episodes ago that I pulled off. But I think this is a better trade because Skeens had already proven himself, and I feel like you didn't have to give up. I feel like that's not that much to get him. I mean, yes, Caminero gonna probably be a stud. Chandler could also be a stud, but they haven't really proven it yet. Skeens, I mean, the season he had last year, I mean, it was like after 5 starts, it's like, is this guy a top 10 pitcher in baseball? You know,
Mhm.
so I
Right.
I think we can defend any trade in which you're receiving Paul Skeens ahead of the 2025 season.
Well, if to make matters more fun, who did we? I mean, if you had to list your top four pitchers, starting pitchers for redraft leagues, who do you, or for baseball, I guess, who's SP 1 through 4 for you?
Good question.
And I guess I can't say this now because one of them that I was thinking you'd say got hurt, but
So yeah, I don't
doesn't
know.
have to be doesn't have to be in order. You could just give
That's what I
names.
was, that's what I was gonna say. I don't know of my exact order. I'd have to think further of that, but it's got to be Scooble,
Hmm.
Skeens.
Hmm.
I think I'd put Corbin Burns there still.
Interesting.
And who's number 4?
Well, what I was going to say falls apart now. They put Burns in there probably.
Well, I feel like
So
I don't know.
okay. So where
Go
I
ahead.
stood when I made this trade, and this is before
Yeah.
George Kirby got hurt, just for George Kirby's on the team, just to throw that out there. But this is before Kirby got hurt. If I were to rank them 1 through 4, I'd go Scooble 1, Skeens 2, Crochet 3,
Oh,
and
duh.
Kirby 4. Right, those would be my top 4. This
Yeah,
team has Scooble, now Skeens, and I have Kirby.
that is nasty. Crochet was the name
Yeah.
who I'd put up there, and I guess Zach Wheeler.
Um,
He's like boring compared to the
yeah,
others,
but
but
like at this point, I have 3 of what I would consider the top 4 pitchers in the game, and then obviously Kirby goes down, and I think I can survive it because I still have Scooble and Skeen, so hopefully they stay healthy. All
that's a
right,
pretty nasty lineup.
it's not bad, right? I've had worse for sure. So other trades that I have made recently, um, same league where I have those 3 starters. I was just trying to do some trades. I traded Shota Imanaga, Jacob Mizorowski, and a 2027 second rounder. And I got Bryce Miller, Theo Gillen, and Ralphie Velasquez.
That one's interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll explain why. Well, we just talked about Mizraski. So
Mm-hmm.
you moved him, which I think that's probably a good move while his value and hype is high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we'll see what he does this season. I don't know if I like Ralphie Velasquez.
That trade was not for the prospects. That trade was for Bryce Miller. Let's be honest.
Okay, well, yes.
Like Theo Gillen's good. Ralphie Velasquez is probably a
I
good
thought you
fantasy
wanted to talk
prospect.
about the prospects.
I mean, look, Ralphie Velasquez is a good hitter. Hit tool power. It'd probably be a decent fantasy first baseman. Not a guy that I would be upset if I have to cut by the end of the year. Theo Gillen is arguably a top 100 prospect for the Rays system at a shortstop, so not bad. But realistically, I feel like I've set myself up really well for pitching in that league. So I think I sent it to you, but my pitching before Kirby got hurt was Skeens,
Yeah,
Scooble, Kirby, Hunter Green, and then Bryce Miller. And that doesn't include the fact that I have Reese Olson. I have Brian Bello, if you're still a Bello believer, and I also have Yuri Perez, who is supposed to be coming back.
that's insane. Well, I also saw you have Emmanuel Clase, just the top
Yes,
closer in baseball.
I did just trade for Emmanuel Clase as well. Yeah, so I'm feeling good about my pitching in that league. I mean, and realistically, my prospects have dwindled. I had really good prospects, now they're gone, and I'm down to having Walker Jenkins, Max Clark, maybe Cam Smith if you count him, and then a bunch of guys who I'm hoping turn into something.
So you made the move for the major leagues,
Yeah, yeah,
and
oh yeah.
putting that all together. Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm. The pitching, I no one can touch my pitching. My hitting is still a little suspect. I do have hitter Shohei Ohtani and I have Bobby Witt, but there's still some suspect parts to my hitting that I'm working on. I do have Dylan Cruz too. Like there's some this is a really fun team. This is like my crown jewel, best team I've ever put together.
Yeah.
All right.
Jeez.
I think we got time for. All right, here's a quick one. All right, this one was just straight up Grayson Rodriguez for Riley Green. I got Riley Green, favorite player, didn't have a share. Now I have a share. So, think what you will of that one. It is what it is. It's a rebuilding team. I don't really care. I'm working more towards prospects, and now I have a player. I have my guy.
Right. I can see that the little bit of when it's your favorite team, right there. There's more value.
Yeah,
There's more
yeah,
value to you. That one we could probably argue further, but
absolutely.
I understand why you did it.
Absolutely. But the one I really want to get out before we talk, because last time we talked about the value of Garrett Crochet. How do you trade Garrett Crochet? Well, this is the same team I just traded Grayson Rodriguez and got Riley Green. I came in last place last year. My roster is not that great. So I'm trading Garrett Crochet. And I got Luis Castillo with the intention of flipping him. I haven't done it yet, but I got
Okay.
Luis Castillo with the intention of flipping him. And then I got Bubba Chandler and Noah Schultz for Garrett Crochet.
Okay, so you finally got some serious offers. I know last week we were talking about you were getting two quarters on the dollar
Mhm.
offers for Crochet. Um, you love Noah Schultz,
Love Noah Schultz.
right? And so if you can acquire Noah Schultz and who is the third piece?
Bubba Chandler.
Oh, Bubba Chandler. Yeah, that's.
So,
I mean, that's what you could say you have one. Castillo is a legit starter on your roster right now.
Mhm.
Maybe SP2 at worst, SP3 maybe.
And he's fine.
Yeah,
Again,
I mean
I'm looking to
he's all
flip
right.
him. I don't care about winning this year. This is still just me collecting like the you continue. I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say the assets that you gained make a lot of sense because Crochet also is someone maybe that is value. We don't know what's gonna happen. We think he's gonna be an ace,
Mhm.
right? He looks like he could be an ace. Um, but there's a lot of hype. So maybe it is the right time to trade him if you
Mhm.
can bring in the people you brought in.
Yeah.
Two arms who arguably could be as good as him someday, right? If they hit their
Mhm.
ceilings. Castillo you could flip for whatever. Um, that's a big trade. I think I like three of those. I don't know if I like the Riley Green.
I like the Riley Green. No, I understand. I get it. This also happened after the Grayson Rodriguez news. The other manager was fine with the potential injury,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
um, so here's my
Those are
thing.
some big trades though, Trevor.
They
There's no
are,
doubt you are moving some big names and big
and
pieces.
looking at what I gave up for Skeens makes me think that I didn't do well enough for the Crochet trade. Skeens happened after Crochet, because I definitely feel like I gave up more to get Skeens, which I guess you probably should. Um, But I still feel like I've done well in terms of setting this team up the way I want to. So, like at the major league level, I have Ezekiel Tovar is worth mentioning.
Okay.
Wyatt Langford, Jackson Merrill, Riley Green, Pete Crow Armstrong. So there's some interesting parts there. Pitching wise, I'm kind of hoping Gavin Williams takes a step forward. Um, I have a Ryan Kerkering. I mean, that's my pitching's not really there. But now I have, in terms of pitching on my minor league roster, I have Noah Schultz, Moises Chase, um, Cade Horton, Kumar Rocker,
Oh,
and
nice.
Chandler. And then
Jeez.
in terms of hitting prospects that are notable, I mean, I have a lot of top 100 prospects here, but in terms of hitting prospects that are notable, Tehran Lorenzo, if I want to talk catchers, um, I'll skip Jace Young, Bryson Rayner and Cooper Pratt, Demetrio Crisantes. But I also have Nick Kurtz, Travis Bazzana, and Sebastian Walcott.
Jeez.
So
Holy cow.
like I'm making these moves to get these high end prospects because I'm kind of hoping to build it like I did in the other league where I just end up with high end talent. Um, and I'm
Yeah.
okay. Like these leagues have been around for a while, and honestly, they're free leagues. I'm not paying anything. So if they break up and I never get there, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So I'm trying to build these teams up in a certain way where I have longevity of winning with top end talent. So we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, sometimes I just make trades in these leagues because there's guys I want. So
You want them to peak
right.
at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not a terrible team. It's just not a winning team right now, and I'm okay with that.
It it will be someday.
It
But
will be someday soon,
yeah.
hopefully. I mean, you think Bazzana, Kurtz will be up soon. Walcott's going to take a little bit longer, but and then Schultz and Chandler should be up soon, and Kumar Rocker, obviously, Kate Horton, obviously. I mean, it's a
Those
fun team.
yeah.
So
Those are some killer names.
those are my defend yourselves. You can go ahead and tell me where I went wrong. It was probably a lot of different places. I had fun this week though with all these blockbuster trades. I'm going to try to make smaller trades, hopefully, because those are fun too sometimes. But either way, Nate, we wish you a great trip to Arizona. Catch some good
Thank you.
baseball. He will be back in a couple weeks. I'll be back with you next week. We are back on our weekly release schedule here for Coffee Talk. For Nate Kosher, my name is Trevor Hooth. This has been episode 39 of Coffee Talk, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network.